Let's give the Sword and Shield gym badges a much cooler name. Over the years, Pokemon had some generally interesting and fun names for all their Pokemon badges. However, when Gen 8 happened, they seemed to give up on their imagination. Today, we're going to focus on giving them some more fun and imaginative names. Before we do, let's look at the previous generations. Gen 1 had the Boulder, Cascade, Thunder, Rainbow, Soul, Marsh, Volcano, and Earth. Before Gen 2 offers us the Zephyr, the Hive, the Plain, the Fog, Storm, Mineral, Glacier, and Rising. Generation 3 had Stone, Knuckle, Dynamo, Heat, Balance, Feather, Mind, and Rain, before Gen 4 gave us Coal, Forest, Cobble, Fen, Relic, Mine, Icicle, and Beacon, followed by Gen 5 with 10. Over the two games was Trio, Basic, Insect, Bolt, Quake, Jet, Freeze, Legend, Toxic, and Wave. However, in Gen 6, things started to change. We continue to have some fun gimmick names like Cliff, Rumble, Plant, Voltage, and Iceberg, but we sadly seem to get the beginning of the less imaginable names with just the Bug, Fairy, and Psychic. Elsewhere, we're not going to really touch on Gen 7 because they weren't badges, they were more trials. So let's have a look at Gen 8. In Gen 8 for Galar in Sword and Shield, the badges lost all imagination. They were just named the same as the typing. So the first couple were Grass, Water, Fire. There is 10 altogether because we did have the version exclusives. But I want to put a big focus on diving into a bit of British history because Galar is the British region. So let's have a look at what I would have rebranded all of the badges. First up is the Grass badge. I'm going to rename this the Field badge. Milo is the grass type leader. He is pretty much designed to be a farmer, and this represents the big open farming fields of the natural British countryside. We could have called it farm, but I feel that the field is playing into what we've traditionally seen with a forest and a plant environment. So for the first gym badge, it would be the field badge. The second badge is the water type. We're going to rename this the Marine badge because Nessa, the water type leader, is in a very marine based city, village with a lot of water culture. It would be exploring the local areas with the fishing environment that has been created, along with the yachts that you can see in Holberry. I feel it's a very fitting one because we have a very big history of our navy and our sea exploration. The third badge is the fire type. This would be rebranded the Furnace type because that would represent the coal mining history that the UK has. We've had a coal badge before, so what about having one of the big furnaces that would have been the backdrop to these big environments? After the third badge, we get the first of two splits between the two games. I do think this is a very unique concept, but first up is the fighting badge, which we're going to rename the combat badge. While it's a very, very simple one, we have previously seen the Rumble, the Knuckle, the Cobble, so why not just go with more of the pure combat, because it could play into the history of the combat athletes that we used to have during some olden times. The alternative is the Ghost Gym, which we're going to name the Spirit Badge. Alistair is the Ghost Leader, and with that we can dive into the idea of the haunted location throughout British history. We have seen previous names revolving around ghosts before, but I feel the spirits that haunt these areas are perfect. We move on to the Fairy Gym Badge. I think we should just name this the Fairy Tale. While it isn't the most original, Opal, the Fairy Gym Leader, is through one of the most beautiful paths of all of the games. The Glimwood Tangle to Balanera is one of the best things you'll ever see any route design they've ever done. It makes you feel like you are stepping into a fairy tale, adding in a bit of the beauty of the stories that were told of something much better than the general life people would have been used to in the modern world, giving us a great escape to this fantasy kingdom. We have reached the next split, which is the two toughest ones. First up is the Rock Badge. I have gone with the Highland Badge. Gordy, the Rock type leader, we can use a previous representation of the Cliff Badge from Kalos to go, let's do the Scottish Highlands. The rock formations reflect the typing perfectly. So with the rock one being the Highland, I went with Ice, just to be snow. Melanie, the ice-type trainer, represents the idea of the snow-topped highlands of the area. So we've had a lot of the fun ice names already, like Icicle, Glacier, Freeze, Iceberg. So why not just go with something a bit simple and represent the snow on the highlands, because you get one or the other depending on the game you play. We have reached the penultimate badge, the Dark type. I have picked the Rebel badge. Pierce, the Dark type leader, represents the rebellious nature of the British culture. He goes against the traditions of the Dynamax style that the other gym leaders follow, and with that, it gives him the following of a little rebel pocket within the kingdom. That is a great representation of many, many things that have happened in the history of the UK. The final badge is the Dragon badge. I am picking the Knight badge. Raihan is the final gym leader, and one of the biggest historical talking points for many of the UK is the long battles between knights and dragons. So, protecting their kingdoms, why not have a knight in shining armor be the badge to represent the slain dragons? These are the final names that I would have picked to make the Galar badges feel much cooler. What ones would you have picked? Which ones do you like? But next time, maybe I dive into the Paldean badges. What do you think? Thank you for joining us on this video, and let's all go and enjoy some shiny hunting, Pokemon, Nuzlocke, whatever you do, enjoy some Pokemon adventures.